Welcome to the Big MX Radio Podcast, this being the Supercross pregame show. I am your host, Brad Gebhart, and with me on the line from Race Tech, we have the guy you cannot reason with, Chris Riesenberg. Chris, how's it going?
Doing pretty fantastic. A little bit of a crazy, chaotic week, I guess. We had a crazy Anaheim one, then we don't have an Oakland, and then we hear a bunch of guys are going Arenacrossing, which is pretty sweet.
Gives us a ton of things to talk about, and honestly, I am just like a full tail wag, champing at the bit, hands rubbing together to be able to wax intellectually about Supercross and Arenacross from a guy who stood at the top of the podium at a lot of both of those events. He leaves without a trace. He came here tonight to probably get on my case. He is the 1990 East Coast 125 Supercross champion, Denny Stephenson. Denny, how's it going?
Very good, gentlemen. Thanks for having me again. I'm enjoying our shows. I was a little concerned when Oakland got canceled, what we would talk about, but let's be honest, I don't think we need too many subjects to cover. I think we can cover everything, and we've always got something to talk about. So yeah, Oakland canceled, ton of mud, great A1, possible big show in Arenacross in Arizona this weekend. So let's get at it.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited about it. Thanks to Race Tech for helping put this thing together, as well as mxd360.com. If you haven't already signed up, do it. Set your lineup. It's not easy to do. I did not do well the first time out, but I'm learning as we go. We're learning through failure. But let's start things off with the Race Tech rapid recap with none other than Checkers. Go.
Absolutely. I just want to remind everyone that Race Tech Gold Valves provide a plush feel with drastically improved bottoming resistance and increased traction. Plus, they're 100% guaranteed and made right here in the USA. So please go support them. Use the code BIGMXRadio to save yourself some money and keep me in a job, please. I'd appreciate it. Now let's look back at Anaheim 1. A lot of crazy action, a lot of storylines. So we saw Eli Tomac crash, gets up and wins on the 2023 YZ450. No growing pains there. He finally wins Anaheim 1. He's never won that race before. Jet Lawrence does Jet, cruises to victory, crushes the 250 class. Cooper Webb, for the second year in a row, places second. Is he for real, though? Is this for real, or is it like last year and it's a fake second place? Chase Sexton backs up a third place finish with a really good ride, but he went backwards. He went from first to third, got passed by Cooper Webb late. Mookie caught the crash fever, that is. He also came through and led the race at one point before it had a huge get off. And then, of course, one of the biggest stories, the biggest letdown maybe from Anaheim 1, Austin Faulkner off the start, doesn't even get to turn one. He's cartwheeling down the straightaway, out for the Supercross season with a torn up knee. Debo, what do you got? What do you think?
Well, you crushed all those very well. We've talked about it a lot already. Obviously, Eli Tomac gets his first win at Anaheim, 1 in 10. Seeing him on the podium was about as happy as anybody would have thought he won the championship, that smile on his face. And also a crazy stat. No one has won the Anaheim winner has not won the championship in 11 years. So is Tomac the guy to go back to back and break that record of 11 straight races without a champion from Anaheim? I think yes. I think Tomac's going to keep this ball rolling. Jet, wow. He did not look good early in the day. His practice was not great. His heat race, he pretty much got waxed by RJ. He was making a lot of mistakes. I wasn't sure what he would do in the main event. I thought he might just ride within his comfort zone, because you could tell the track was pretty gnarly. And what he do, it just showed how great a rider Jet was. He got up front, and I think we could all agree he was probably riding about 85% and still pulling away from everybody. So Jet does what Jet does, man. He's on top of the world, and he is clearly the future of the sport and crushing these 250 guys. Whether or not he can go undefeated for the whole season, right now, I believe he's third in the overall 250 Supercross wins list, tied with myself for 22nd. Myself, Dean Wilson, Jake Weimer, and Keith Turpin. If he wins the next 8, which are the 8 remaining West rounds, he could jump all the way up to number 2 behind James Stewart with 16 wins. James has 18. So Jet is looking to make his mark this season. Whether or not that's something on his list, everyone likes to be atop the wins list if they can. Webb, on the other hand, man, a second. It was a well-earned second. I think we can all agree that he didn't get the greatest start. I believe he came from 10th on the first lap. But someone who really crushed it it was Daniel Blair during Race Day Live. He said this track was going to suit up for Cooper Webb. And it truly did, because Cooper was strong. The whoops were jumpers, as he admitted, and the corners were rutted. So he was able to turn on a dime, come through the pack. His conditioning was superb, because he wore out everybody else. Ferrandis, Sexton, Malcolm, and found himself in second to end the main event. Is this someone we're going to see weekly from Cooper? I don't know. We were not very nice to him in our preview show. We let him have it pretty good. So I don't know. Racing's better when Cooper's up front, because he's such a strategic rider. His racecraft is excellent. So what do you think, Brad? Do you think Cooper's this is a regular thing we see every week from him?
Honestly, I think it's fool's gold. I need to see more of it. I've seen this last year, and then an absolutely abysmal, like he got second almost the exact same way last year, where everyone else was either crashing or beating each other up or something weird. Like, this was a perfect track for Cooper Webb to do exactly what he did. It actually reminded me a lot of the 2017 Oakland track, and we'll get to Oakland in a second, but that place was an absolute it was full of bomb holes, and him and Eli went toe to toe, and Eli got the better of him. But it was a crazy race where, like, basically everyone else was just trying to survive, and it was him and Tomac. And honestly, we saw a lot of the same thing this last weekend. Cooper, like, he honestly, in my opinion, he still doesn't look to be an absolute peak Eli or Cooper Webb condition. I think he's a little bit heavier than he normally is, which still, he's probably still walking around at like 10% body fat. So what am I really saying here? But in all honesty, I need to see more of it. I need him to back that up and do 2-3 weeks in the podium, or in or around it, maybe even get a win. For me to say that Cooper Webb is Cooper Webb. In regards to Eli Tomac, that was maybe one of the most dominating performances that I've seen him on a Yamaha, period. Reminiscent of when in 2017 he just laid a bomb on everyone at Phoenix, ended up winning by like 12 seconds. He was like a man amongst boys. Like, everyone else was struggling with the track, and Eli Tomac was just riding out there. It was really impressive to see. I was like, this last weekend was like, they always like A1 can almost never live up to the hype that we give it, because we spend 3 or 4 months like just blowing smoke up its ass. And that one blew our expectations out of the water. Checks. Honestly, I can't remember the last time that we had an action-packed Anaheim one that
Four
was
different leaders.
And 4 different leaders. Honestly, like, when I first saw Eli took the lead, I was like, oh, we're gonna have one change for the lead, and that's gonna be it. And that couldn't have been further from the truth. We got a great race, man.
Well, I mean, one of the things to keep in mind is, like, the last time the one that comes to mind anyways, or that I was going to say is Kennard and Millsaps. They battled all the way down to the last lap. That was a pretty epic A1. But yeah, a lot of times you might get some surprise winners and stuff, but not necessarily the epic race. Real quick on the Tomac thing, or the Webb thing, sorry, that stands out to me is he was happy on the podium. He was smiling on the podium, and he's saying he's back. I don't feel like the Cooper Webb that wins championships is happy with second place ever, especially when Eli Tomac crashes and comes back and still beats him. That's a really big red flag for me if Cooper's happy getting second place. It was a perfect track for him of cutting down below the ruts. No whoops to really speak of. I mean, you're jumping across one set and 2 jumps, and the other ones were small. So I'm not sold on Cooper Webb. It is nice to have him at least in the conversation and in the mix, because I think all of us in the pre-race podcast stuff, we didn't think he was even going to be a factor. So at least we get to talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, I think that, I think you might be being a little hard on Webb, just for the fact that from what I read about him is he said that after Paris, he knew he sucked last season. He felt like shit at Paris, and he really laid into his team this offseason between Paris and A1, let him know that we got to get this KTM dialed in. And I think maybe it was more, I don't think it was him just being happy for getting second. I think it was like, okay, I'm feeling good. The bike did well. I did get second. I didn't lose a lot of points this opening round. We're heading in the right directions. I think that was almost as much of a smile than him being just settling for second. I think it was just like, okay, we're going in the right direction. That's just kind of the way I saw it. I believe that would be more of my way I would take from the way he is positive and moving forward. So he's got his bike in a better place, and he's in a better head place than he was last year. that could bring a smile to his face, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I think that Cooper Webb maybe surprised himself a little bit, like as much as he surprised the onlookers who sort of had their minds made up of how his season is going to go. He went ahead and squashed a lot of that and sort of maybe changed some people's minds. And like I said, just like surprised himself a little bit, and good on him for doing that. In my eyes, I still need to see it a little bit more. I need to see the first 3-4 rounds of him being either on the podium, on the top of the podium, or very close to it, consistently, for me to say, yep, Cooper Webb is going to be a serious threat for this championship. Otherwise, I think it's a bit of fool's gold. The one thing I was really surprised to see is how much Chase Sexton tightened up, and a track like that, like, and maybe Denny, you can talk about this a little bit, is that was the longest lap time we've seen at a Anaheim in quite some time, over a minute long lap times, which is normally they've had tracks at this particular track, at this particular venue, that are sub 45 seconds. So there's a layout out there that these guys can chop 15 seconds off of. So the fact that it was a technical layout, one that was sort of low speed, like there was some big jumps out there, but a lot of them were like, you're threading the needle throughout those ruts and stuff like that. And Denny, I almost feel like riding a really slow technical track can almost wear you out even more, when literally every little jump, every little rut, you really have to focus on, versus a track that is flat as a board and you can just sort of like go wide open on, because then you can be a little bit more free and you're not having to hit the exact marks every single time. I think that really affected some guys, and Sexton was certainly one of them.
Yeah, no, I thought the track layout was fantastic. It was reminiscent of the 90s, very busy, not a lot of flow. I saw some of the fans complaining about it on social media. I think they're nuts. I think this type of track is way more entertaining, brings far better racing than having, 100-yard lanes where you can jump through them in two leaps. Especially with the 450, you talked about the track being tighter, making the body a little bit more tight, blood pumping, the heart rate pumping. I think that, again, from the busy track and having a big 450 with 60 horsepower, trying to get that thing around it, it definitely tightened up guys. Sexton looked tight, but he's got to be happy to walk out there with a third. He might have led some early laps. In the past, Chase Sexton might have gone down, dropped the front end of the whoops, tucked the front end of one of the bull corners, ended up 6 or 7. He only dropped 5 points to Eli, which is, really nothing to start out the season with. Sexton did get tight, did get third, didn't win when he had a chance to, but I think he can leave there with his head held high and know that we're heading into a round 2, which turns out to be now San Diego, only 5 points down on the champ. So I think the top 3 should be pretty relieved to get out there as they did. And as we heard from Jet as well, Jet was just hoping to get through to Sunday, and it was a gnarly track. I like the busyness. I like the minute-plus lap times. As far as the ruts and the transfers, I saw some of the photos, and they were jumping some triples and quads with some gnarly ruts. I don't miss those days. I don't miss those days at all. When you're heading into a big rhythm section, the foot pegs dragging, grabbing a foot or something. That was an gnarly way to kick the season off. And I know in the past they've tried to keep Anaheim a pretty mellow track. This was a man's track to kick the season off with, and the men rose to the top, as we saw.
The men rose to the top, and now it's time to send things off to round 2. Next, just kidding. Oakland Supercross gets postponed, not running. They've experienced tons of rain. It's raining there right now as we record this in real time, which is a huge bummer to see. And I honestly, I was looking forward to watching some racing this weekend. I know a lot of people enjoy going to the Oakland Supercross, but it's not canceled altogether. That will be slated all the way over to February the 18th. And good on Feld for being able to secure that booking as quickly as they could, like literally same day they were able to get that going. But what are your guys' thoughts on just the decision in general? Did they make the right call? Who does this help? Who does this hurt? I'll throw it over to Checkers right off the hop here.
Well, me personally, I'm excited that it's postponed. As much as I wanted to watch racing on Saturday night, I'm not a fan of mud races. When they're to that level, it's really not a good show. It throws a mix in things, and I understand that it's exciting for a little bit, But watching 3 hours of dudes rolling around the track with their feet paddling, if I wanted to do that, I'm going to go to the local Arenacross and watch the beginner class. That's not what I'm into.
my
I
racing.
want to watch some good racing, some rhythm. I want to be able to tell who the dudes are, not covered in mud. Watching a Supercross in an open stadium getting dumped on in rain in person's not good either. It hurts the attendance. It hurts the show. It hurts the crowd. I'm okay with it. I think that it was the right decision. I mean, let's be real. We don't want to put people in danger trying to travel there. Just for riders that have to fly, are they even going to be able to get to the stadium or anything like that either? There's a lot more going on than just the dirt bike race. I did see that the Dirtworks guys, who are amazing at working with these conditions, were able to get somewhat of a track built, but it was still going to be a mess. And it's, like I said, everything else going on. It's really a public safety thing. Like I'm okay with them canceling it. I think that's definitely going to help guys like Pierce Brown, who hit the deck really, really hard, and it's going to give him an extra week to get healed up a little bit and be ready to go for round 2. So Malcolm Stewart, I'm guessing, is not feeling too good after his get off either, although, he's physically okay. You're still bumped and battered and bruised. And that extra week could definitely help out guys like him. So as much as I wanted to watch racing on Saturday night, I'm okay with the decision.
Yeah. What do you think, Debo?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Supercross was never meant to be the Blackwater 100, and that was what it was going to be. We talked about a little before we went on air that, it's okay once you build the track and it starts raining that evening and the track then deteriorates, turns into a muddy mess. I think that's fine. That's part of racing. But to start the night off, to start the whole weekend off, I mean, the state of California is in a state of emergency right now. People are dying. There's 200,000 people nearly without power. There's just more stuff going on than a Supercross this weekend. And I think that was taken into consideration. In fact, that even though the Dirtworks, which are phenomenal at what they do, did try and get part of the track to get in. I saw even they possibly had the gates in. It rained all day today. It's supposed to rain all day tomorrow. 100% chance all day Saturday. Yeah, like Checker said, I just assume that the riders are able to put in a good show, that the fans are able to enjoy the whole venue, the whole event. So hats off to Feld. I knew that they were having a meeting with the teams and stuff on Thursday morning and yesterday morning, and they or on Wednesday morning, and they came through, they did it right. Good for them. Hats off.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that too.
But one thing is that they did add with the track, by them adding the race on February 18th, drivers and then the teams will now have to drive from Tampa, Florida to Oakland, which is 2,800 miles. I looked it up, and then we'll follow that up with a drive from Oakland to Dallas or Arlington, which is another 1,800 to 1,700 miles. So I know some of the privateer riders have said that, we'd rather burn up a bike than drive those miles. I don't know. It's a lot of miles to drive, but those bikes ain't cheap either. So it's just part of the sport. It's just the way it is, and it adds a new adventure, a new twist. But we'll enjoy it at home either way.
For sure, and I just want to point out that it's really good that Feld took the time to get with the teams and riders and actually involve them in the decision instead of just saying, well, we're going to do what's best for our company and we have tickets to sell and who cares about you guys. I think that's a huge step forward for the sport and where it's come from. And I mean, I think a lot of that goes all the way back to another mud race in San Diego when everybody's stuff got destroyed with lime and including their bodies and stuff. It seems like that really was the kickoff to a lot of the progress that's been made. And I'm sure that it's grown even more with the whole Super Motocross Championship thing. I mean, the OEMs have been an integral part of that whole series taking off too. So cool to see progress in the sport. I give them a lot of a hard time about things that they could do better and whatnot. So we got to call it out when they do things right. And also I saw that the purse came out this week a little bit, or at least it was posted, and I saw it. The 250 purse is quite a bit better for the guys. So props there too. Like they're doing things to strive forward, and I would like to appreciate that because then I complain a lot otherwise. Yeah,
absolutely. Give yourself some running room so that when you do complain that you've certainly earned it. And hats off to them for some extra purse. Lord knows racing in the 250 class has not been nearly as advantageous as racing in the 450 class. So maybe you just have less guys in the privateer ranks racing 450 because they're sort of only excuses like I can't make any money in the 250 class, and now you can at least make a little bit more than you used to be able to. And honestly, I think that there's a cost to everything. I'm sure there's a cost as far as having to move this date. Just like the teams have to drive those miles, so do the trucks that travel with all the tough blocks and everything else. So that's a cost that they're going to have to incur that I'm sure they don't. Well, I'm sure they have budgets that are allow for things sort of like that. But also you have to think of like the PR side of things. Like they could have raced this race, save themselves some money. The fact that like 99% of the people who had bought tickets for that were probably going to go, or they couldn't refund their tickets, and all they would have been left is just walk-up tickets, which I don't think there's a lot of people who walk up day of to go watch a Supercross. All of the tickets that have been purchased so far will be available to transfer over to the February 18th. So that's all taken care of. And same thing with the wear and tear. Like you think there's wear and tear on dirt bikes? Think about wear and tear on equipment that these guys run. Like they rent all of that stuff a lot of the times from the local rental places for cat or whatever it happens to be. You think those places don't charge you when you bring it back all covered in lime or packed with mud? I'm sure there's a cost that comes along with that, and they don't want to have to deal with that. So if they can move it all 1 week, or a few weeks, basically move it a month forward, I think that was a great move on their part. And I really don't see too many downsides on it aside from a little bit further drive. And honestly, it's a big drive. But I talked to Kevin Moranz about this today over text, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a long drive, but like if you think about it, like from a racer's point of view, like, hey, I got a hell of a drive here. I'm going to blog this entire thing, try and get some crowd-funded stuff or get some fans involved. Like, hey, I'm driving across. Like, you want to like buy me a bag of chips at a gas station near you? We'll link up. I'll sign you a jersey." And they can make money doing it. Like these guys drive across this like country. Like how many times have we done Unadilla, Washougal, Millville? Like it's the same drive. So I don't honestly, that the drive is not that big a deal. Honestly, probably the biggest deal is the fact that now instead of having a week off in the middle of the season, we will not have that week off. And just as we have this nice reprieve right now, where guys like Mookie can not be so sore rolling into round 2, they're going to be awfully sore rolling into round 8.
The good news is they did add that second week off this year, which usually it's 17 races in 18 weeks or whatever. And they added the one extra week off, which allows there will be a break in the middle of the season still. I mean, those drives are terrible, but like you said, if guys are creative, they can figure a lot of things out. You get someone else to haul your bike and you fly in for that Oakland round, or you leave a practice bike in California and you race a practice bike, or find a dealership to get you a bike and fly with suspension. Carpool with somebody else. There's ways to make it work. I mean, you spoke of Moran's. Here's the thing. He's a positive dude and he's figured out a way to make money doing this thing as a privateer. A guy like Logan Carnout, same thing. Like, does it take a hit into their budget? It absolutely does. But at the same point, be creative and you'll be just fine. Or skip the race. I mean, I do think the turnout will be down a little bit because there will be guys that'll skip the race and just stay east.
Yeah, and also the attrition in the sport.
Somebody needs to give Justin Starling a pep talk. He didn't seem too happy on Twitter today about it.
Well, he's funding his own program, right? And he's got to send his band to go and whatnot. But again, link up with, say, AJE. I know he's buddies with them. Throw your bike on their semi.
Yeah. There's a will, there's a way. Figure
it out. Borrow a bike. That there's ways to make it happen. And I guess racers go race, and you are dealt with it. There's circumstances there. I mean, how many of those guys would have skipped this weekend altogether and just not ridden because it was going to destroy everything? That's always a battle in a privateer's mind too. Like, do you go destroy your stuff, or do you take advantage of the fact that this is your one opportunity that you can take advantage of a bunch of dudes having huge issues, and if you just stay upright and get around the track, you might have your best career finish.
Yeah, honestly, like given the fact, like if there's even say 5 guys and like 5 guys that are normally in the night show who say, yeah, I'm not driving from Tampa to Oakland. All right, well, that bumps you 5 spots closer. Maybe you're not in an LCQ. Maybe you go straight through on the heat race, and that can be a bargaining chip when you're going to look for sponsorship next October. When you said like, yeah, at the Oakland Supercross last year, I went in straight through the heat race rather than having to go to an LCQ. I don't know how valuable that is to a prospective sponsor, but for those guys, it's a lot. So I think they may ultimately they made the right move. Hats off to those guys, and I'm looking forward to watch the Oakland Supercross when it happens in 1 month's time.
Absolutely.
So we're moving on to segment number 3, and it is brought to you by mxd360.com for cash. Little bit of versus challenge questions. Checkers, do you want to kind of introduce this segment for us and kind of take us through the beginning here?
Absolutely. Well, if you haven't already, there's still a chance to probably beat me at motoextreme360.com because I did so terrible at A1. I don't have much of a head start. It was pretty rough. But go over there, sign up. You can still battle with your friends each week for free. Actually, you don't have to pay to do that, but join the paid league. And if you can just come from behind, when Carmichael crashed out of A1, came back and won the title,
he was good at coming from behind.
A CRF 110 from Storm Lake Honda. And I believe, Denny, if you sign up sometime before the end of the year, you're still eligible for the King's gear. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If you sign up anytime between now and the Salt Lake City finale, you are eligible. Your name will go in the drawing, and you will be eligible to win an autograph set of Jeremy McGrath's gear, the King, the Showtime. Yeah, the man with 72 wins and 7 Supercross titles. His gear could be yours for simply signing up and playing motoextreme360.com. Absolutely.
It would look really, really good on that wall right there.
I can see it. Can fit right between Henry Miller and Matt Byton.
All right. Well, just take Byton's down. He's retired. He's washed up.
He's done. He was a dirty backflipper.
So let's dive into some versus challenge questions. And since we don't have a Oakland race this weekend, everything is based on the entire Supercross season. And I'm going to throw the first one to you, Debo. Who scores more points? The Club MX Yamaha team of Styles Robertson and Phil Nicoletti. This is West Coast only. Or the Star Yamaha team of Styles Robertson and Levi Kitchen. At A1, the club guys put in work on them. Styles and Nicoletti. I'm sorry. That is definitely Enzo Lopes.
Enzo Lopes. That was okay. I was confused there.
Yeah, Lopes killed it.
And I couldn't think of the other rider. So good rebound right there. I think that Enzo is riding phenomenally right now. He is, he ended the season at Salt Lake City with the fastest qualifying time in his qualifying group. And he came back at Anaheim 1 with the fastest qualifying group at the end of practice, first group. So he looked really well. Phil Nicoletti took advantage of the ruts. He's the guy we know. He's technical. We know he hates Supercross, and it was a little bit more outdoorsy with the ruts and all the jumps. Both of them did very well. Where on the other hand, you got Stylez coming his first weekend on the Star Yamaha. I thought he did very well. Levi Kitchen surprised, I think, a lot of us as well, with a solid top 10 finish. I believe when the end of the season comes around, I believe that Star Yamaha's Robertson and Kitchen will, as a combination with the most points over the Club MX team. Phil is a great Supercross rider. He tends to have some mishaps, some unexpected crashes. Enzo as well. He hasn't got yet on the box. So it'll be close, but I believe the Star has the better riders in Stylez right now, and Levi, at least the bigger, stronger future riders. And I think coming into the end of we see Salt Lake City come around, the 2023 West region will have of Star will have the better duo.
I think that's what you get with the factory team, is a little bit of the consistency, which is going to help, I think, the Star guys rack up more points. I also think the top end of where you're going to get a finish from a Styles Robertson or Levi Kitchen, I feel like I see those guys getting probably a podium each at some point. Although I was very hard on Kitchen because he has not proven yet. A 6th, I believe, is what he got, is his best Supercross finish yet. Nothing that I saw looks like he can't do well, even on a demanding track. And I mean, Denny's convinced me in our previous show. I'm on the Styles train all year long right now. I'm expecting big things from him. Lopes has been a very big surprise. He's impressive for sure. I just don't know about consistently getting it done yet, but he is showing those flashes of brilliance that are going to help him in the future, catching attention of the actual factory teams. But I think you just don't have quite the consistency from him. And I think Nicoletti is going to be a 5 to 10 guy week in and week out, which is fantastic. It's going to stack points. But when those guys are starting mixing it up in thirds and fourths and stuff like that, you lose a lot of points pretty quickly. So I'm going to agree with you. Star Yamaha will have more points than Club MX.
And Enzo Lopes got 6th, Levi Kitchen was 7th, and then Phil was 8th and Stylez was 9th. So the two were grouped together. The duos were grouped together in both in the top 10. So I agree with you. I think that the ceiling for Phil is about a 5th. I could see Stylez and Levi flirting with the podiums, and Lopes will be anywhere from 3rd to 6th to 7th, I believe, as well. So let's stick with that. What do you think, Brad?
I'd first like to mention that I am tied for 190th overall in the 250 West Series standings. I dare not check where I am in the overall rankings altogether. But in return, in terms of this discussion, I think you got to give the nod to Star Racing Yamaha. I think in order to stay on factory equipment, Robertson needs to be in or around the podium for the rest of the series. I think he needs to be a factor every time he's on the track. And if we're calling this Levi Kitchen's rookie year, for all intents and purposes it is, because he raced one race last year, or like I think he got hurt during qualifying of one race.
22nd.
Yeah, so he raced 2 last year. If that means that Christian Craig isn't a rookie in the 450 class, or is a rookie in the 450 class, then Levi Kitchen is certainly a rookie in the 250 class, which means I think honestly, as long as he's a top 10 guy all season long, that's good progress. I would love to see him close to the top 10, close to the top 3, maybe in a podium or 2 to close out the season. Obviously there's going to be some attrition, but honestly, I think that it's more likely that Kitchen battles with Enzo Lopes a little bit more than he'd like to, but only for the reason that I think that Enzo seems to have taken a step forward, which is great for him. Nicoletti, oddly enough, during his Supercross seasons, he typically starts out really strong and then seems to peter off a little bit. He is pretty banged up over the years. He's got a lot of different things that he sort of nags with him in terms of injuries. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him have some success early and then peter off a little bit. So that's a really long way of saying I'd take Robertson and Kitchen over those two for sure.
All right, next up, after a probably disappointing A1, I would say, for Christian Craig versus Colt Nichols, who
Just
I think
Debo
was one of the standout surprises. Nichols was inside the top 10. Craig was well outside the top 10. And honestly, other than the first practice, wasn't a factor. He did have a big crash. Which one of them has more points before the end of the year? As much as it pains me to say it, I think it's going to be Christian Craig. I don't think we saw what he really is all about at A1. I mean, it was the worst conditions possible for him. He had a big crash. It was very ruddy and not at all West Coast like, where he really accelerates, and the whoops were a non-factor, which is his strongest point. Christian Craig will get better. Nichols did a great job of doing all the laps and making a good night by just staying up. Got a good start and almost whole shot, or did whole shot, and then stayed at the front of the field by simply attrition. I think that's awesome. I think that's what he absolutely needs to do the first half of this season, and then the second half he needs to crank it up there and try to win some heats and really make an impression to keep himself a ride. But the only way that you're able to do that and actually make it memorable is you have to get some races in first where you're finishing all the races or all the laps. What do you think there, Brad?
When it comes to Christian Craig and Colt Nichols, honestly, like I've already labeled Colt Nichols as the rookie of the year, mainly because I don't think Christian's a rookie. I think his results this last weekend had more to do with the practice crash, or the qualifying crash, and just not feeling comfortable the rest of that day. And Saturday's track was a get me out of here kind of track all night long. I feel like there was a lot of times where guys were just sort of surviving out there. So when you're just when you're surviving to begin with because of a crash, and then the track is very much challenging, I think like can't really take a lot from those results, but what you got from Christian is exactly what you're going to get from that sort of situation. And honestly, I think hats off to Colt for a 6th place. Like I still think he's probably going to be in and around the 7, 8, 9, 10 as a 450 rookie, that's awesome for him. And I do see him being sort of the leader of the rookie pack throughout this year. I think Colt gets more points. I really do.
You're insane. Colt
That's
did
okay.
great. Six was good. Great start. You know, he was the most quiet sixth I think we've ever seen in a Supercross finish. He rode very well. First 450 Supercross main event. Hats off to him. Hats off to Factory Honda for picking him up. And you know, congrats to Colt. He's been through a lot of injuries over the years. Fantastic sixth place finish. Craig, on the other hand, things could not have gone worse for him. He started out very, very early in the day, very fast. Took a pretty big header in the whoops, from what I understand. Rang his bell a little bit, and then it was just downhill from there. New bike, crash. You know, we've seen Christian ride with a little bit of emotion a lot of times. When things aren't going well, it can kind of get caught up in that. This was not a good start for him. But considering it wise, he still got a 13th. We thought Colt was a ride of his year with a 6th, and Christian had a shit ride in 13th. That's 7 points. Very small differential, but yet complete opposite end of the spectrum of what way we feel they rode.
That's true.
So obviously for me, I'm a Christian Craig fan. I'm a Colt fan as well, but I believe Christian Craig at the end of the season will have more points than Colt Nichols.
I tell you what, though, one last thing on that is going to be an interesting story to watch is previously, I would say all the way back to definitely 3 seasons ago, Christian Craig was very, very mentally fragile. He definitely fixed and corrected that over the last 2 years, which is,
I would agree,
honestly part of the reason I got proved wrong, that he made it to this level of where he's at. But can he bounce back? Is he mentally strong enough to bounce back from a very defeating ride? I did have a chance to watch his vlog, and he looked very, very, very defeated. Nathan Ramsey was in there talking to him and saying, hey, just let it go. Like, it's done. You can't change it. We move forward now, and we learned something from it. So it'll be interesting to see how that bounce back is. Speaking of bouncing back, Adam Cianciarulo bounces back and finally finishes inside the top 10 again. So that's good to see him. He finished in A1, stayed on the track.
Bounced you out of Survivor, baby.
And then also Joey Savacci right with him. So a couple of Cowies, 1 factory bike, 1 privateer bike. End of the year, who has more points? Tell us, Brad.
Oh, this one's tough. Like, this one is tough because, like, both guys have had a hard time staying healthy. That is truth about both these guys. Obviously, top end speed, you got to give it to Adam, but we're not talking about one race. We're talking about one season. And I have a hard time confidently saying it's Adam Cianciarulo, but I'm not going to sit here and predict that he hits the ground. So I'm going to go with AC. I think that he's got the top end speed. I think he's got more Supercross wins than Joey does. But honestly, the two of them are evenly matched. And I really wish Kawasaki had the ability to run 3 guys, because I think that they'd have a 1-2-3 punch that would be pretty tough to beat. So I'm going to go with AC.
I would have to agree. Again, it goes back to that spectrum. We have Adam getting a 9th, Joey getting a 10th. AC, I think everybody's happy that he finished, happy he had a good race, happy he just kind of put in his time and his laps and finished top 10. While on the other hand, Joey got a top 10, and we're thinking that is a great finish for Joey. When it all seems, 16 rounds down the road here, I'm gonna have to agree. I think Adam, he stays healthy. And for one, if Joey or Savacci does not find, if someone else unfortunately doesn't get injured and Joey does not step into another ride in the next 7 to 8 rounds, we won't see Savacci for the rest of the series. So for the simple fact that Adam has a full contracted year and Joey's only doing selected these first 8 rounds, I think for me it's pretty obvious we're gonna have to go with Adam Cianciarulo, and let's hope he keeps building upon this, stays healthy, and we see some top 5 maybe podiums out of him.
It was definitely shocking to not see any real flashes from Adam Cianciarulo. He has the quietest finish he's maybe ever had in Supercross. Speaking of the ride thing, even if Joey gets a ride, then he has to deal with learning a new bike and team in the middle of the season. His best bet is to have Adam Cianciarulo or Jason Anderson go out, because he's at least familiar with that bike and program at Factory Cowie, because he's been there a few times.
I think he's stoked on that bike, though. Like, that Cowie that he's on, I think he's really, and I would be too. That's a really well-appointed bike.
Absolutely. I mean, my hope for him really is that the program's going so well and he's doing so well that Rick Ware decides, hey, we're having fun doing this. We're doing well. Let's just keep going. and let's just run you on that and not make Joey leave and go to another program. And I don't know. I'm really worried about Adam Cianciarulo because it seems like as quiet as that ride was and knowing what he can do, that he's almost riding to not get hurt. And that's usually when bad things happen. I mean, I believe that's exactly what happened to him a year ago. But I'm going to go Adam Cianciarulo has more points at the end of the year. I think that his strategy is going to work out this time of just getting the laps early in the season, almost similar to what I said about Colt Nichols. Get the laps in early in the season and then crank that baby wide open mid-season, and start to battle for some heat race wins and some podiums and that side of things, where I think his speed can come from. I did see, I wish I could credit who said this, but I guess Adam had 2 of the 3 fastest laps during the segment times during the main event. So some speed was still there on the racetrack.
Oh, it was Clinton Fowler.
Attaboy. Of course it's him. So thanks, Clinton. Appreciate it.
Stack
Give him
God.
a follow if you haven't already. All kinds of awesome information coming out from him. But that shows me that even though it looked real quiet, that there was actually something under the hood for Adam Cianciarulo. Next up, the KTM duo. Very similar again. Marvin Musquin. I would say people would say he had an absolutely terrible Anaheim 1, not inside the top 10. Eliminated a ton of people from Survivor, by the way. And Aaron Plessinger, who showed some flashes of brilliance. People were super excited about it. He did look very spicy as far as getting good starts with the practice starts and stuff and the fake starts and time qualifying and whatnot. Although his times weren't that good, he showed some flashes out there. But it was also a wet track. Debo, what do you think?
Well, I had both these riders on my MXD 360 team. Plessinger was hot, and so he would get a 10 extra points if he top 10, which he did. And the more I watched the track breakdown, the more I watched how he rides, he was an easy bet higher for me. So I picked him up. Musquin ran top 3 in all of his every qualifying round. I believe he even had the fastest qualifier in first section or first session of the 450 class. He was on fire all day. So I was expecting a top 5 from Marvin, no problem at all. And then we come to the main event. Marv gets a shit start, makes some mistakes. He was running top 10, as we talked about earlier, checks. Him and Barsha both were, I think, 8th and 9th or 9th, 10th going into the 20th lap of the 21 lap moto. And I think Marvin went down a quarter. I think we could see that in the back of the TV broadcast. And I believe Barsha had collected in with him and really, really shot the hell out of everyone in your Survivor game who had either one of those guys, because they ended up getting 11th and 12th. And I had Justin Barsha for the 3rd time in your 4 times playing your stupid game. I've been eliminated in the first round. And thank you to Marv for taking down himself and Barsha in the process. But back to the original question, Plessinger's riding for a ride, I think, on this KTM team. Marvin might be on his way out, but the conditions, I think, definitely suited AP more so than Marv. Marv got his crap start, made some mistakes. I think the old guy Marv, the Timex Frenchman, is going to be the one between the two who has the most points come Salt Lake City round 17. Marv over AP.
Yes, I get to disagree with you finally. I think Father Time has finally caught up with Marvin. And
after one round, you guys already come to this conclusion, huh?
Hey, we got to draw conclusions straight from A1. Jump to conclusions. Absolutely. Cooper Webb is in this title fight for sure. Hands down. Ken Roxon was going to take off with the title a year ago too. Hey, why not? But the other thing I'm going to look at, it is still raining in SoCal. It's supposed to rain in SoCal more. They're going to San Diego, another open stadium. Looks like that could probably be a mud race. A2, another open stadium. If it's going to stay rainy in SoCal, that's a huge advantage for Aaron Plessinger, plus a way to get some confidence going. And I think if he gets the ball rolling, I think it can keep rolling for him. I think it's just getting that ball moving, and maybe A1 was enough to do that, to get it going, get some confidence back in him. I think that Marv may have the better finish in one race of the season. But one thing I remember seeing, with Kevin Windham and even Chad Reed, as they were getting later in their career, every now and again they could turn on the speed, but the consistencies would actually started to go away a little bit of how often that they could do it. We even saw it a little bit with Brayton of, they would have a really, really good ride here or there, but the normal ride and the average finish started to drop down a little bit. As Denny always says, Father Time never loses. I'm going Aaron Plessinger to have more points than Marvin Musquin.
Well, I hate to blow your bubble here, burst your bubble, because it shows here on the weather I'm looking at right now that next Wednesday through Sunday, sunny and 60 every single day in San Diego. So I do not expect a mutter in San Diego or A2. So you might want to dial back that
Well, I hope not, 'cause I'm
18
going.
fire. You are going. That's right. What do you think, Brad?
Well, honestly, I think people forget that it wasn't that long ago that on a 250F, Aaron Plessinger owned this sport as far as North America is considered. He was absolutely lights out for Star Racing Yamaha. Some rough years on the Yamaha. Then obviously last year, him and the KTM did not get along. Seems like that relationship's going a whole lot better. And yeah, like one person who's undefeated is Father Time. And that may be happening for Marvin Musquin right now. But either way, I think that this is like Marvin Musquin is certainly winding his career down. His fastest days are behind him. I don't think he would argue with you with that, at least not very vehemently. He's over 30. He's not a kid anymore. And Aaron Plessinger is still very much trying to make a career out of this. Obviously, he's had some success. He's made some money in the sport, but doesn't want to hang him up anytime soon. I still think he's got an upward trajectory throughout his career. So I think this season is going to be the rise of Plessinger, and let's see Marvin fall off a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised.
It is weird with Father Time, but it isn't a slow drop off. It is usually a cliff. All of a sudden it hits you. Your mind changes, your mindset changes, your body changes. I that's why I felt kind of when I was time for me to just get out of Arenacross. And I think we've seen it in many different sports that, as Checker said, and we've all said, Father Time is undefeated, and he does not fuck around, because when he decides to take action, it's usually a big drop off the cliff. So I am not ready.
Denny, you probably saw it for firsthand with Budman. Like, Budman was knocking down championships and main event wins in Arenacross right up until he wasn't anymore.
Well, he'd left and went and rode the Nationals one year, and then tried to come back. And I think he was a little off at that point. But yeah, I mean, it really does. And that's a big reason, is when all of a sudden you start looking around you, when you first hit a rhythm section, first hit a triple, and you got 5 different guys all around you who are 18, 19, 25 years old, and you're in your 30s, you've already experienced some injuries, and you start questioning yourself and what's going to happen, you all of a sudden now become a hazard. And that's part of just the Father Time. When your mind starts overacting your reactions is when it's time to put the bike back in the garage. Not saying Marv's like that, not saying anybody else like that in this point, but it does happen. And but like I said, I'm not ready to put Marv on that list yet.
Only 2 of us are ready to write Marv off after A1.
Yeah. Good job. But you got to stay alive. We got to make this thing interesting. We can't agree on everything, right?
100%. I know we're going to argue with these next 2 guys. Checkers, why don't you kick it off for us? Anderson and Ferrandis. Both of them had pretty quiet nights this last Saturday. One a little bit more successful than the other, but I want you to break them down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we would even talk about this or consider this question before A1, but we're judging everything off of A1, right? Where Ferrandis had a really good night, and Jason Anderson didn't. Remember, Jason Anderson had a huge practice crash. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see that one, but I mean, he took a gnarly face plant, definitely feeling it. I guess another guy may be benefiting from an extra week off to get the body back right. And he really wasn't the same after that. The one positive for Ferrandis, he got a good start in his heat race. And Tomac also got a good start, which means that bike maybe get some good starts. If Ferrandis figures starts out, this is a conversation to be had. I'm not sold on Ferrandis getting his starts figured out in Supercross. I haven't forgotten that Jason Anderson tied for the most wins with 7 in Supercross last year. I'm still on the Jason Anderson train, not only to have more points than Dylan Ferrandis, but to still be a title contender in 2023 Supercross. What do you got, Brad?
What do you got, Bradley?
Honestly, I think this. I don't want to overreact too much. I'm already overacting, basically saying that Marvin Musquin's career is over, even though he's probably going to get a win this summer or this winter. But Anderson, I think he bounces back. I think he has a much more solid. His season will not be defined like Anaheim one, much like it wasn't this last year prior in 2022, where he found himself on the ground. But I will say this, Dylan Ferrandis, is if he's able to get his starts figured out, which it seems like they've gotten better, he's certainly going to be a guy who can at least mix it up with these guys. And you guys have seen in the past, he does not back down when he has some blood in the water. And if he considers himself a contender for something, damn well he's going to contend for it. So these guys are going to be a lot closer match than I thought they'd be throughout the season, but I'd still give the edge to Anderson throughout the season. And obviously, I seriously think that Anderson can see himself getting a few wins for sure.
Well, before we start, suggesting Ferrandis is all of a sudden a Mike Alessi on the gate, let's put into perspective. He got one good start this weekend or last weekend. He got a great start in his heat race, which gave him a second place, which put him on the inside of the tunnel jump or the finish
of the least fair start that Supercross has ever seen ever since they stopped doing those split starts from 06.
That was pretty crazy how much difference it was. I've seen some decent ones kind of come from the outside, but they couldn't come across until 50 yards till that section of whoop was done, so they could start coming back into that inside groove. And who was on that inside half? Dylan Ferrandis. Where he's got still started? 9th. He was 9th on the first lap. So he still got a shit start in that main event when he had the best half to be where he was. He had to have one of his best gate picks he's had in the last 3 years riding 450s. And he rode phenomenal. Starts are still garbage. Anderson had his worst night of racing. Worst I've seen him in a long time, except, a couple of those Husky seasons after his title when he was still trying to figure some shit out with that #1 plate. But I don't think there's any question. I could see Ferrandis get a 9th next week, and I could see Anderson winning. And so, yeah, Anderson over Ferrandis. Absolutely. Biggest thing for us is hoping Ferrandis gets through all 17 rounds and we get to see him go head to head in this outdoor title with Jet and the boys. But for 2023 Supercross, still Jason Anderson, the El Hombre.
I think that they listened to our show and didn't hear us correctly when we said that we wanted to do a start that was only half the width, and they didn't stack them behind each other. Instead, took up even more floor space.
Way wider. Yeah, let's make the start the entire floor. Yeah.
I think what they're going to do next time is have each side of the gate on opposite ends of the stadium, and then have the middle of the stadium be the first corner. They meet in the middle and then head off into one direction, or maybe in opposite directions.
Like the old started Super Motocross.
The old Monster Energy Cup. Yeah, I mean, they've had some crazy starts. I think they should just make them go through the rhythm section heading towards each other, and then have to actually go through it, and then they turn and they come back through and meet. I think that would really liven things up. Maybe a gator pit, who knows?
Let's get wacky. Okay, last one for the versus challenge questions. This one's going straight to me, and it's Cooper Webb versus Ken Roczen. Battle of the X's, baby. Cooper Webb, honestly, like, hats off to you for a second place finish there. If you're in fact back, if you are the person that you say you are, and you're putting in the rides and the fitness is there and you're feeling better about the bike, obviously we still haven't seen it in full size whoops, but honestly it looked a little better this last weekend than I expected. And aside from some early laps where he showed some speed, Ken Roczen was about as invisible as they come. This last weekend, I expect him to be right in and around where he was at this last weekend, if not worse. I give it to Cooper Webb every night of the week, and I would have said that prior to Anaheim 1. Like, I don't expect Ken to be able to be podium guy or like in and around there consistently throughout the year. He didn't show me that this weekend, and if anything, it was almost solidified it a little bit more that I think he's going to struggle on that machine. He looked good at times, but at no point did he look like Ken Roczen to me.
Go ahead, Chex. I'll wrap this one up. I'm going on this one, so we'll let you have second fiddle.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet because I don't want to steal all your thunder, and
there's going to be thunder.
Take all the heat, but mine isn't so much that I'm a big believer in Webb as I was talking about. Mine is more, I have not a lot of faith in Ken Roczen. I said multiple times I thought Anaheim 1 would be the best race of his year. If not, it's always the beginning of the year strong, it's going to fall off. And if the beginning of the year starting with a 5th and being not really all that relevant, I have to give it to Cooper Webb, who already logged a 2nd. And I think he has at least a little bit of fight in him for a while that'll keep him ahead of Ken Roczen. And at the end of the year, Cooper Webb, without a question in my mind. Debo, let's sound off.
Well, let's just first of all talk about Ken. Great job with the 5th place. Great job to Heb. Great job to his our friend Travis Sewells, his mechanic. I think they did fantastic. I think that is what we're going to expect, is him to be around 5th. And I caught a bunch of shit because I said, oh, he's not going to get top 5. Oh, come on, man. Let's be honest. The 5th was definitely possible, but people are saying, wow, he got a 5th. Look how great he did. I think if he was on that Honda he rode at Paris, he could have won this main event. He was a different rider. He looked stiff on the Suzuki. He struggled in the corners with the ruts. He struggled through the rhythm section, jumping deep into the valleys. He did the bike looked how I felt last time I rode an RMZ 450. Our friend Nick DeLogers, I rode it out at the winter set a couple times. The bike just feels heavy when I rode it. And I'm just an old slow guy, but I can feel the difference in the weight transfer, the way the bike kind of would feel. And that's the way it looked like Ken was riding the bike. It had great power. He got great starts. There was even an early motion there, or moment there in the 450 main where he passed Eli, and fantastic. But he slowly worked his way back. He was out of the top 5. He got a top 5, thankfully to and a blessing, because Malcolm went down, missed a shift, hit a neutral, or Ken would have been a 6th. And I don't think that he's going to all of a sudden improve suddenly. The bike is still going to be a bike that was remodeled in 2018. Hats off to the team, hats off to him. I just think that this is not a doubt anything else other than the bike is older, and that's just the way it is. And Webb, he'd had a garbage year last year as far as he was concerned, and even his fan base and even the media thought so. Cooper still ran podium and top 5s for a lot of rounds, other than a few mistakes he made. One of those being Detroit, where he thought that was a triple and was a double into the rim section. End of the year, Cooper Webb over the top of Ken Roczen when it comes to the points. Not even close.
I'm just looking at the 2018 RMZ owner's manual here, and it does have reverse. And Ken Roczen was able to find that. So that's rather handy. But that's one way of getting the team's first top 5. Good for them.
I take it that you're taking Cooper Webb.
Yes.
All right. Well, before we move on to the next segment, I just was looking in chat, and Mark Taylor wants to know, does Colt Nichols get a win this year? Do either of you guys think Colt Nichols has a chance at a win? I wouldn't even probably put him on a podium, honestly.
I don't like thanks. First of all, thanks for subscribing, Mark. But I don't see Colt getting a win. I could see Colt getting a podium. Late season podium if he's there. Honestly, like he's a guy who's dealt with a lot of injuries. I don't want to put any bad juju on him, but if there's anyone who might not make it through the entire season, it might likely be Colt Nichols. But I don't see a win coming from Colt this year. I do have him picked as the rookie of the year, but I don't see a win coming from him. Some top 5s for sure. Maybe even a podium, but no wins for Colt in 2023, in my opinion. But love the guy. What do you think, Debo?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen rookies win races in their first season, first race. Josh Grant, Anaheim, but end of the day, Josh Grant had blazing raw speed. Colt, I don't see being. He doesn't have that flip a switch, go fast. At least we haven't seen it. Obviously, only seen one round. He could show it up here quickly in the 450 class, but it is really deep. It would have to take a lot of a pretty gnarly first turn crash and some other wrecks for Colt to get a win. Nothing wrong with that. It's his rookie year. He wasn't brought on to Honda to win a main event. Him not even running a podium would not be bad. Colt running consistently 5th through 10 every round for 17 rounds, I think it would be a huge success. I do not see a win in the near future for Colt on the factory Honda in the 450 class as of yet. No. But thank you for
enough. Asking. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the question. Let's move on to segment number 4. And this is the debate with Debo, which honestly, this whole show should be called Debate with Debo, because there are some questions that are usually posed to him where both me and Checkers both disagree with Debo, but that's kind of half the point. We need to have some differing opinions in here, and you'll get differing opinions when you invite Denny Stephenson. But so this is the question. Do you like mud races? Are they good for the sport? Are they bad for the sport? And if in what circumstances should a race be postponed? We've kind of touched on that already, but I'd like to have you elaborate on that a little bit more.
I believe I've raced one of the worst mud races. It wasn't even a mud race. Talking about a track being swamped, as we would have saw this weekend in Oakland. I raced in 1981 or 1991 Hangtown. Yeah, where they only raced one set of motos, and it was unbelievable. Talk about a race that needed jet skis. There wasn't really mud. We were talking about it in my Moto Extreme 360 group on Facebook. People were talking about how muddy was it. Like, did you come off the track muddy? The bikes had to weigh a ton. I think the bike and myself came off the track cleaner than I went on the track. I mean, it was just pure water. It was racing in a river. And those type of conditions in outdoors, that's part of what outdoors is. It is muddy. It is all kind of extreme conditions. We saw the Troll Ohio National get canceled twice in 1 year, which actually ended up affecting the championship between Grant Langston and Ryan Hughes. So we've seen races being canceled within the last, 20 years or so. As far as the Supercross, I think we spoke earlier about it as well. When the track's built, they've got in some practice. They're able to ride there's a little bit of racing, and then all hell breaks loose. The rains come down. The fans have already had an experience in the pits. The riders already had a little chance to ride. We've had some racing going on. But this weekend, I think there was much more going on in the state of California, especially up in Oakland, San Francisco area. We hadn't stopped raining for the past 2 weeks. 200,000 people had our homes without power in the state of California. For me personally, I think this was a smart decision. As Checkers said also, I'd much rather watch these guys race on a real track. Supercross was never meant to be the Blackwater 100 again. So I believe that postponing it was the right thing. And I'm looking forward to February 18th when they get back to Oakland on a dry track. So let's enjoy this weekend off. And as we're going to lead into, enjoy some Arenacross. Who'd have thought we'd be talking about that stuff?
Oh, we are going to talk about some Arenacross. Checkers. This is unprecedented. We've never had an opportunity like this where first of all, a Supercross has never been canceled midweek or at all. This has literally never happened. Unprecedented for the sport of motocross or Supercross. And the fact that in just a 6-hour drive away, in fact, this Arenacross is closer to the home base for most of these Supercross guys than Oakland is. And with the AMA Arenacross guys putting some more money in the purse, that it was already going to entice some guys to come over, but this is going to double down that point, and you're going to have a ton of guys coming over there. And I know you have a little bit more information than I do about as far as how you can watch this series and the ins and outs of it, because I don't have the MAV TV app, or however you watch. You can kind of clue us in a little bit here, but Arenacross is maybe going to be as hotly contested as ever rolling into this weekend.
Friday. It's Arenacross in Arizona. Kid seats just $5. You're going to pay for the whole seat, but you're only going to need the edge of it. Tune on in. Can you tell I'm a little excited? Back
yes,
to the roots of Arenacross. It's always a super exciting show. And honestly, I've been watching them anyways, and the battling's been pretty good between Isaiah Clark giving Kyle Peters a bit of a run. Kyle Bitterman was second in the series last year, was pretty talented, but really it's been, those three guys since they went west. On the east, they had Luke Neese in the mix and some other guys. Hunter Yoder actually showed up to the first race along with Josiah Notsky on the PRMX bikes. So, they've had some talent in, but this is going to be unprecedented since, back in the early 2000s, is amount of talent that's going to be on the gate. The series bumped the main event win, which I think was $1,500 before, up to $2,500 per main event. So if you sweep both mains, you're putting $5,000 in your pocket, along with, any contingency and stuff like that. Being an AMA series, they have contingency. And we get live racing. So although we don't get Supercross on Saturday, we get Arenacross on Friday night. If you have MAV TV, it's 8:30 Central Time, I believe 6:30 on the West Coast on MAV TV, or you can go on get the Ride TV app, which if you watch Canadian motocross or if you watch Endurocross, you already have the app. All the Arenacross
then I will be
races are
watching
on there. And honestly, that app is, I know when I mentioned it, people are like, oh no, another MAV TV app. I've watched a bunch of stuff on it, Endurocrosses, Canadian Nationals, as well as the Arenacrosses. It's one of the better apps that I've actually worked with. You can actually pause it during the races, believe it or not, which is, if you watch Peacock and ever try to pause it, you can't. So that's pretty cool. I do think that we're going to be stress testing the servers for them a little bit. But holy crap. I mean, the tracks they've been building have been gnarly real arena crosses. I saw pictures of the whoops, and they're big boy arena cross whoops. I think it's going to be a bunch of action. I think that some supercross guys that maybe haven't spent much time in arena cross are going to find out that they maybe don't know much about Isaiah Clark, but he's pretty dang good at what he does. And Kyle Peters is an absolute specialist with a whole lot of experience. I don't think that there's a guarantee that any of those guys come in and walk all over them. I heard the Solitaires bringing Thury up, and I hope Cole Thompson shows up. I saw Wageman brothers are both going. Cade Clayson's in, Jerry Robin. I mean, there's a host of some bad dudes that were in main events. Grant Harlan, straight out of the 450 main at A1, is heading up. Racers race, and I love seeing those guys. I'm glad that they're not sitting at home on their couch and they are lining up to put some cash in their pockets and give us some dang entertainment.
I agree, Checkers. And me and you love arena cross. We've been around a lot in our lives. That was how I wrapped up my entire career, was racing arena cross. And my kid arena cross, when the shit got crazy, it was real aggressive, great fan base, 2 nights a week. Friday, Saturday night, 4 main events over the weekend. One year, I think we had 19 weekends. We had 72 main events we raced over the season. It was an early series. And what made it great back then is we started it back in October. So all eyes were on us for 3 or 4 rounds until they took the break for Thanksgiving and the holidays. And we'd kick it back off during the opening round of Supercross. But for that first month, all eyes were on Arena Cross. It was fantastic. And we've had a few opportunities that I think when they ran on a Friday night before the Las Vegas Supercross, they had all eyes on them. And then also in Atlanta the year that they split the Supercross track. So great opportunity for the series. Our friend Robbie McCoury from Oklahoma, someone I raced with Arena Cross, has now taken over the Kicker Arena Cross series with his partner, which I'm not sure the name of him, but they're looking to bring it back. I didn't even know he had taken over until I ran into him at Loretta Lynn's. They have their own awning and tent, and they're looking to bring it back to relevancy. They want to bring back the teams and bring it back into something that the Feld tried to make it, Supercross is a little brother, which Arena Cross is not. Arena Cross stands alone. We were always come one, come all. We can take you down in the bull ring, and I think we did many times with a lot of Supercross regulars. So I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm happy that guys like Clayson and Harlan and Solitaire team, those guys are going to make the effort and make the drive over, because this series deserves it. I think, again, racers are racers. Let's go make some money, and let's put on a great show for us at home. And again, MAB TV, which I don't know if a lot of people know this. I just happened to stumble across it. If you have a Samsung television, a Samsung Smart TV, there's something called Samsung TV in the input section, and you can get MAB TV through your Samsung television if you have cable already, or even if you don't. I don't know, it's just off. It's separate of cable. It's called Samsung TV, and I stumbled upon it the other day, and I'll be watching Friday night. I'm looking forward. The whoops are huge. I think there's gonna be 50 guys trying to qualify for about 15, 12 spots in the main event. It should be great. And hats off to everybody, the locals, not the locals, the regulars like Kyle Peters, Isaiah Clark, Kyle Bitterman, and all the guys who are coming in from Supercross. It should be a great night.
I like it. Yeah, no, I'm excited. Honestly, my only sort of question coming into this is, and maybe you can answer this for me, Denny, is like when you were racing Arena Cross and you were sort of a stalwart within the series, would it have kind of bugged you or rubbed you the wrong way when you're an Arena Cross guy and you see a bunch of Supercross guys just sort of show up, or the odd Supercross guys show up? Like, are they welcomed with open arms? I wouldn't imagine so, because Arena Cross is obviously a little bit more rough and tumble racing than you'll find at your local outdoor or Supercross. And yeah, there's going to be some guys, there's a number of guys that are going to be trying to make it in this main event. I don't think they're going to kind of upset the apple cart for the top 3. And kind of piss off guys like Isaiah Clark and Kyle Bitterman. I think Kyle Peters still just trounces everybody, but there might be some guys not so welcoming to these newcomers.
Well, when we raced, Budman and I obviously come on. A lot of the guys had come from Supercross previously, Mike Jones, Jeremy Buell, guys like that, so we were used to racing a lot of the guys. And Mitch would send his PC guys over. He'd send Nick Way over. He'd send Nathan Ramsey.
Okay.
So for us, it was just, we knew those guys. We were still around that sport quite a bit. Supercross, motocross, knew all those guys when they come in, and we would kind of just smile and go, you guys are going to go home awfully bummed out. You're going to be really bummed that you came and did this, because we were considered kind of the old guys. We had outgrown or kind of grown our rides and our place in Supercross, and Arenacross was the place we found success and a new home and a fan base, and it was outstanding for us. And we were not afraid to welcome people, new riders in, Supercross guys. We'd let them know right away in practice. Jason Thomas never lets me forget that he came to Jacksonville one year to ride, and he said I knocked him down in practice for no apparent reason, and I don't even remember it because it was just that's the way we felt, that this was our home. We had learned how to ride 17 to 20-second lap times, 4 lanes, 4 turns, a section of whoops, a rhythm section, a finish line catapult, and a start straight. This was our world, and we were not afraid to mix it up with anybody. My old saying with the Dash for Cash, it was 4 laps, come one, come all. I didn't care if you were Carmichael or McGrath. I could beat you in 4 laps. It was 2 minutes long, no problem in my mind. So for these guys, and I hope that the Arenacross guys make their presence known. There are some great guys coming in, like you said, Grant Harlan, who got a 16th in the 4th main last weekend. I talked to Grant a little bit earlier tonight. He's a little concerned on bringing the 450 in. It's going to be a big bike in those small tracks, but he's looking forward to getting a good start. And if the whoops are big, and which I sent him an image, the whoops are gigantic. So I'm looking forward to it. I think Kyle Peters, he's been racing Supercross pretty regularly. Isaiah Clark had a good finish, I believe, last season, end of the year. And in outdoors, I know he did. I think they'll look forward to the challenge. Anytime you can mix it up with some Arenacross guys or Supercross guys, put the two together, it's going to be a great show. And I think everybody will just be happy to for the money, the extra purse in it, and to make their mark. It's going to be a big night. I hope people are watching.
Checkers, you're beaming right now. Checkers is just like vibrating in his chair. The Arenacross has injected talent, and more eyes are going to be on this series than maybe ever rolling into this weekend.
I mean, I'm all about action and excitement, and Arenacross is pretty much like an LCQ every time that they line up. And especially with the format that they went with this year, which it hasn't been all that entertaining when the depth really hasn't been there, because they run 4 heat races, but they only take the top 2 out of them. So it's like an LCQ every time, but it only works when you have this much talent. So it's going to be awesome because they're going to be battling for transfer spots every single time on the track. And I think that's going to be a little bit of a shocker for Cade Clayson, because he's been riding the 450 Supercross class for quite some time now, which is kind of mellow and mature. And guys, unless you have Alex Ray behind you, they're not dive bombing you in every corner trying to rip your leg off. So I think that might be a little bit of an adaptation for him, because there's no rest and there's always someone trying to saw your front wheel in Arenacross, because there's just there might be guys coming on head on. There's tough blocks everywhere. But I also don't want to understate the fact that Grant Harlan's been racing. He's been a racer, and he's been racing everywhere, including some Arenacross stuff. I don't think the 450 is a problem. I've ridden a 450 in Arenacross a good bit. It takes a little bit to turn it, but it's such an advantage on the start and in the whoops that it's not a bad deal. I don't think it's a massive advantage on the starts because they're so hard packed and so short, and you have to manage keeping the front end down. But as long as you're a good starter, it is an advantage. Those guys also been starting on grates and practicing on grates versus the Arenacross guys starting on dirt. That's something to factor in. And Kyle Peters is a very, very good starter no matter where he's at. On a 250, you can maximize the power on. I think Peters is going to be really, really hard to beat. I think Clayson, it might get a little bit of a wake-up call. He might leave saying, I'm never racing in Arenacross again. Although he's very talented, so maybe some of that will shine through. But watch out for Grant Harlan. I think that he'll be good. Robbie Wageman's really good in the whoops, and those Suzukis have proven to be really good starting bikes. They also seem to turn really well. I mean, they're notorious for being pretty good in Arenacross because they corner so dang well, and that's never really changed. So I don't know. It's going to be super exciting. I'm glad it gives us something. I mean, I was going to watch the Arenacross Friday anyways, but it makes it way cooler with way more people. I just hope that those guys get the full Arenacross experience that haven't done many of them. And there's some bar banging, there's some smashing, there's some good racing and utter chaos, maybe some fights in the pits, all the fun stuff.
I hope some feelings are hurt. Let's just put it that way, But again, one last thing I'd like to say is hats off to these Supercross guys who are making the trip over. I mean, we've always talked about Checkers and recently with Brad, racers race, as that's what it's all about. You go where you need to go. If you need to make money, this is the place to go give a shot at it, man. And if it doesn't work out for you, no shame in that game. That's what I say. I think just the fact that these guys are showing up, going to some other series, great job. Hats off to every single Supercross rider who's making this drive over. I'm very happy for you, and I look forward to watching it Friday night as well.
Is there anything to learn?
VIP tickets. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is there anything to learn for bike setup or anything, or is it so much different that you don't think that it'll translate at all to help out for Supercross, or even is just getting some nerves out, dropping the gate or anything? Do you see any advantage with any of that, Denny?
The bike setups are considerably different. I spoke with Grant, like I said earlier. He said he felt his bike was a little soft at A1, and so he was going to keep that same setup for Arenacross, thinking that the soft setup on the 450 would help him get through the whoops and help it settle down in those bowl corners, like you talked about. Because when you're turning around a barrel, I mean, they're tight corners, which is honestly a little bit what we saw in World Supercross, some really tight 180 corners around cardboard boxes in that series, where this one will have no longer, I don't think, the orange barrels that we used to have in it, but it's still a very tight corner, very tight track. So I think that the biggest thing is that nothing really translates other than just coming in and knowing how to just ride anything at any time. And, it's, again, the Supercross guys are coming into a series in a type of track that they're not used to running. These guys have already been putting in a lot of laps and a lot of main events. And I think the regulars will have an advantage in that point. But Supercross riders are great. And let's be honest, Clark, Peters, Bitterman, they're all good riders, period. So
$60 gets you a VIP adult pass. General admission for adults, $33. You want to sit in the low sheets, that'll sit you back $38. And I really like the layout. There's actually kind of like the two layouts are sort of contradictory to each other. One on the website looks like it's going straight up the middle and then back down towards down through a rhythm section over some whoops, and then the finish line is by the stands. And then they have a visual rendering where the start is straight up the middle, then straight into a set of whoops, back down the start straightaway, over the catapult, through a rhythm section, and then back around the backside of the and joining where the first corner is. Debo, do you have a favorite layout for Arenacross? Is there any preferred way that you can lay out an Arenacross track? It's pretty limited as far as what you can do, but I'm curious as to if you had a favorite style of layout.
It's really, it's pretty basic. I mean, these arenas you don't realize how small they are when you're actually there riding, at least when you've done it for as many races that I had done in the past, until you watch it on TV. I pulled up some old races, checkers. I've talked about it on a text thread, and it looks like we're racing in a closet. I mean, it is so freaking small. We actually I pulled up some old British Arenacross races, and they have gotten a little fancy with their tracks, their layouts. Start alignments, everything else. The old Mike Kidd Arenacrosses, when we'd run in basketball arenas, hockey arenas, they were all pretty much the same. The start was on the right, first turn sweeper to the left, into a section of whoops, into a tight left-hander, over through a rhythm section, which might be a triple-double, a double-triple. And then you would turn right and then go up over the catapult into a tight left and back down the start straight. They might change that variance around by putting the rhythm section on one side, the catapult on the other side. The track they're actually going to next weekend for AMA Arenacross for the next 2 Fridays will be in Guthrie, Oklahoma, the Lazy E, where their track, that is a huge rodeo arena. So that track is gigantic. The floor is gigantic. At least it's more Arenacross, more Supercross style. Not quite as big, but they used to build some huge monster jumps, huge monstrous rhythm sections. The ground is dirt because obviously it's a rodeo arena. So they're able to dig into it. The whoops were gigantic. So that was one of the more extreme type of tracks we'd ever ridden. As far as Arenacross, the track layout was about 30-45 second long compared to normal Arenacross. But I think anything small in that, you're going to get pretty much the basic type. 4 lanes, 17 to 20 seconds. Lay it down. The only difference is the dirt. Depending on what city we went to. We raced in Long Island one year where the Islanders play, and during the winter, and the dirt they brought in was frozen. It came in chunks. It was not covered. It came in frozen in chunks, and the track, as the weekend progressed, Friday and Saturday,
melted.
The dirt started thawing out, and you can imagine when the dirt starts thawing out on a tiny little track like that, it became treacherous. Albuquerque one year, they brought in sand, so the track completely just broke down as we were racing. That was one of the most enjoyable type tracks. Again, the layout's usually the same. It just depends on the dirt composition, which can be challenging, whether it be sticky, wet, dry, slippery, or even sand.
Yeah, speaking of racers race, if I'm an East Coast Supercross guy, they're not far from their opener. And that Guthrie track it's big. It actually would apply as a really good warm-up for Supercross, just to get gate drops and get some of those butterflies and nerves out. So we're talking about this weekend, but maybe looking forward, that should be something that they should be looking at. I mean, you mentioned Nick Way. He used to do it all the time. I remember seeing him show up at the Des Moines Arenacross. I remember seeing like Heath Voss come through, and they were using it as Supercross warm-ups and a way to put cash in their pocket. You get good stories from when those guys would show up and race.
Heath Voss was a great rider, obviously fast Supercross. He was big. I remember, Des Moines Arenacross. Obviously, Robbie Floyd was a Dash for Cash master. He could get money out of a dry stone, out of a man begging for cash. That guy would hand him all of his money. It would usually get to $1,000 for a 4-lap race. And I remember Heath Voss I landed over the catapult, and he just went a little bit wide, and I just went straight through him and took him down and took the win. And Robbie Floyd and I were always friends, and the crowd was half cheering, half booing. And he asked me, how'd that go, Denny? That was a pretty aggressive move. I said, well, let's just say one thing. Keith Voss was a screen door, and I just kicked him right there, walked right through it or something like that. And, Arenacross for me was it was kill or be killed in a sense. And I learned that from riding with Mike Jones. Anyone knows Mad Mike Jones and how we race in Supercross? Well, imagine that on a 17-second track. And I remember one year at Des Moines, or one of the Arenacross, Jonesy, it was hard to move. He was a big, solid guy, good, solid 250 pounds. And I went as hard as I could with my tough Honda 250, took out the orange cone and orange barrel that's in the corner, took the barrel and Jones, what I thought was going to take him out. I hit Jones so hard, I just fell down. I just bounced ricocheted off of him. And Jones just rode off. I think he probably stopped at the corner and looked back at me and flipped me off or something like that. But that was Arenacross back then. And so that's just the craziness of those guys coming in and doing anything. I remember talking with Ivan Tedesco at the Millville National, and he was actually quite cool with what he was saying. He brought up the fact that his first Arenacross was Reno, and at the time Reno Cross. Well, it was actually, it was Arenacross, but it was part of the series. And he showed up, and as he remembered it, that apparently me and Bud were trying to get him drunk Friday night before the race, which I don't remember that, but if Ivan remembered it that way, more power to him. But the kind words I remember him telling me, was like, I wanted to get into racing. I was into racing. Everything was really cool. But when I saw Arenacross, he goes, what I saw on TV in Supercross really bored me, he said. There wasn't a lot of personality at the time. Maybe this had to be in like 2001, 2002 area, or maybe 2000. And he said, I came to Arenacross. You and Budman were like larger than life to me. He said, Arenacross was fun. It was action packed. You guys got to do whatever the hell you wanted. You're full of personality. And he goes, and that's what made me want to be a bigger racer and to not behave like that, but have more flair and more style to the way I raced. And I was taken aback because I'm a big Ivan Tedesco fan. And for him to say that about myself and Budman and just the series alone shows a lot. I think it was really cool to hear the impact that the Mike Kidd Arenacross series had a lot on younger riders. So that was pretty cool. So I'm hoping that this new series it's the same series, but the new improved Kicker Arenacross series has that same influence on riders, where riders can come in, show a bit more personality, show a bit more aggression, and leave with some money in their pockets, and the fans go home with a great entertainment and a great show.
Yeah, if you watch Matt Burkeen's latest video, it's definitely a commercial for Arenacross and chaos in action. And if you haven't already, it'll get you fired up for tomorrow night. It is a video shot from the stands with an iPhone from Colorado, but I promise it's worth every second of watching it. And it is literally a 20-minute highlight reel of Arenacross chaos. And that's just what he caught on camera.
That was one night.
In one night.
One night, yeah.
And now we're going to throw in.
It's not a season full, yeah. Well, that was one evening.
And now we're going to throw in Jerry Robin, who's always exciting, and just say, hey, buddy, top 2 to the main. Let's go Arenacross, and along with a bunch of other fast Supercross guys too. Yes, I'm beaming ear to ear. I'm so excited. Much more excited than I am to talk about our draft scores.
Oh, I'm excited about this. Denny, can you please bring up the draft scores from Anaheim 1? Can you update the fans on how that's going?
Yeah, well, we went to the draft set kind of last episode live. We each drafted 4 450 riders, 3 250 West riders, and 3 250 East riders. And then we would accumulate the scores over this first round, 8 rounds. and then we'll redraft once that's gone. With Anaheim in the books, it is old Brad out front with 122 points, who was led by Chase Sexton with a third, Ken Roxon with a fifth, Nichols with a sixth, Jet Lawrence obviously was 26-point perfect day, and Levi Kitchen and Stylers Robinson. So he was going all-star right below that for a nice 122 points. Myself, I find myself in second with 108 points. But my biggest problem was I had one Pierce Brown who went down early, did not get a chance to ride the main event. I had a donut, but I was led by Eli Tomac and Cameron McAdoo with the first and the third there. And trailing back in third with 96 lowly points, already 26 points down, an entire main event down to already Brad, is our lowly Chris Riesenberg Checkers, with who had a very terrible night. And let's just cover that. He had
let's just start with the guy that only made it halfway down the start, Austin Faulkner.
His night was ruined before the night even started.
Because now I have to replace him, but I'm replacing from the bottom of the barrel in a not very deep 250 West class. And then everything's looking pretty decent in the 450 class till Malcolm Stewart decides to go tumbling across the ground. So I got double whammied on those guys. I mean, those were two of my top 3 draft picks are cartwheeling across the racetrack in their main
cartwheel.
event. Things are rough. At least Malcolm's okay.
Yes, you were led by RJ Hampshire with his strong second, Mitchell Oldenburg with a very strong fourth, and Dylan Ferrandis with a surprising fourth as well. Those are your top guys. Jason Anderson, who we thought might win the thing, was your number 1 pick, and Marvin Muskin, who we thought would be running top 5. He had a miserable night and ended up 12th. So Checkers has some great riders are capable, but they did not live up to the hype. And we will he'll be looking forward to, we can replace a rider if they get injured. That's the only way you can kind of hit the waiver wire. So Checkers is going to have to replace Austin Faulkner with someone on the list that we did not draft in the our first round there. So we are happy to move on to round 2 here in a couple weeks. Brad 122, myself 108, and Checkers in a lowly 96.
I'd like to think that I've really established myself here, but I heard that there's a bit of a redraft after round 8, which basically just brings everything back down to is going to probably bring me back down to earth. But for now, I am happy to be on top of the heap.
Oh, but it can get better with Moto Extreme, right? Do you guys happen to have your score?
It can only get better with Motocross Extreme.
It didn't
can only get
better.
So my night was horrible. I ended up with 84th out of the group. I did not do as bad as you two, though. You guys were really not.
I'm 162 overall. I'm the worst.
No, you might. Yeah, I think I looked that
106th.
up. Yeah, let's check that out real quick. Yeah, you were out honestly 162nd. Yes, with 98 points. Not a good night, but it was your first time playing, and I would like to say that it is not an easy game. This salary base is challenging. You got to figure out if you want to go real heavy and then go real cheap, or do you want to go kind of happy medium? And the first round, we had some crazy guys being hot. We had Max Volan hot. So if you didn't take Max, he was a big points getter. Aaron Plessinger was worth a lot of points. And so was Joey Savacci. They all hit the top 10 in the to be worth the bonus 10 points. In the 250 class, I believe it was Derek Kelly in 10th, was the only other hot rider to make the top 10. Dylan Walsh was just on a cusp in 11th. So he did not get that 10-point bonus. And then Checkers, he did not have
casual
a
moto fan in the top 40.
Yeah, Checkers went 106th. So it was a rough night to kick things off for all 3 of us. We did not do well. And we'll be looking forward to it. I've got the new salaries kind of posted for this weekend, obviously, but I will not be releasing them until next week when we got the final entry list ready for round 2, which will now be San Diego. So we'll keep powering forward.
Unfortunately, my Moto Extreme 450 squad looks a lot like my draft team, with Cade Clayson, who cartwheeled on the start, Marvin Muscan, who had a terrible night, and Jason Anderson, who cartwheeled in practice, not doing well. So 3 of those guys were also or a couple of those guys were on my draft team and sunk it as well. Savacci was really the only highlight of my night. Dylan Walsh hitting would have been great.
That's the worst thing you do is when you I did that in but when you try and make, if you're in multiple draft leagues, multiple draft games, and you decide to pick the same one for all those, Because then basically when one team sucks, they all suck.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
and we
no
both are out
kidding.
of Survivor.
Yeah.
Check.
well,
So are you 130, 148?
I was 106th place.
106th. Why do I have it's oh, that's 450 series. Okay, now I see where I'm going wrong. There's the overall, there's the 250. Okay, that makes sense. Not surprised to see that Roto is good at this game. You got sixth in
Roto jumped
250
in the very
West.
first, the very first game we played. It was actually our second one. We did a 90s throwback. We did a retro round. It was kind of during COVID when not a lot was going on. We did a retro game, and then Roto actually pulled the win off on that one. But
Wow.
since then, he's become a trader. He's gone to the other side. He's gone to the dark side of the pulp. But Roto does a great job with all he does, and he's got a win in here. He plays pretty consistently. He doesn't play any of our high roller leagues, but he plays consistently. We always appreciate him sticking with the game.
Well, like I said, if
Okay.
you guys want to catch up to me, myself and Brad, especially, we don't have much of a head start. MotoExtreme360.com. Sign up.
Do it.
Get a chance to win the King's gear.
$12. Like you could literally win the King's gear for $12.
Yeah, and it's a good chance. We're still building our fan base and our player base, so the odds aren't terribly bad. You could actually, like you said, go home and with that set of gear, or at least receive it. Random drawing come the Sunday after Salt Lake City, and you could have the autographed King's gear. I talked to him the other day, and he was pumped about doing it. So we are happy to have Jerry McGrath. He's donated some gear in the past, and always a good friend of the series.
Yeah, I mean,
For
where
sure.
else
And
do
like
you-
so in the meantime, like the money that's put towards that, is that just part of like a Ponzi scheme that you're running, or is that going into like a high interest index fund that we're not aware of?
It pretty much helps pay for the game and for for shipping prizes and buying trophies.
No, I
and
get you.
everything else. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm definitely. It's going into crypto.
Nice. All right. So lost then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's nowhere else that you can go and flush $3.5 million down the toilet every week unless you play Moto Extreme as terribly as I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to play. It's a different type of game. The salary base changes every week. The hot riders will change throughout the series as well. And yeah, it's a challenge. It's, and the most knowledge thing I think about playing Moto Extreme 360 is the fact that you can't just change one rider out. Like when you find out a rider might be happening, you can't just swap out one guy, because when you change one guy, it changes almost your entire team, because you got to find salary somewhere else. And so if you feel like changing a rider up with about 10 minutes left in before lockout, I don't advise it.
Okay, so this is actually kind of crazy. So I told you that Roto got 6th in the 250 class, but overall he was 138th, which means he did really shitty in the 450 class.
Yeah, because we have live scoring throughout the series, throughout the race tonight as well. So you can watch the scoring for the 250 class, and you'll definitely see guys who are running top 5 take a big win in 250 class. And you can click on their team name and see what their team, what their team is. And you can see that they, that for the 250 class, they went Jet, RJ, Cameron, and and say Stylus Robertson, which left him for the 450 class of some of the lower price guys who definitely evens out. So I used to consider wanting to do a 250 overall and a 450 overall separate from the overall championship game, but then it would be just like you could just manipulate your team too much. So to make the game truly work, it's 3.5 million across the board for all 8 riders. It's best to try and be as consistent and as even as across the board, because when you load up one, you tend to fail in the other, depending on how the hot riders are. The outdoors even gets crazier because we score all 4 motos. That becomes a really big shit show. So if you're out there and you're wanting to play, mxd360.com for your chance to win a 150 from Storm or 110 from Storm Lake Honda with autographed McGrath gear. And don't forget to visit your local race tech dealer.
Heck yeah. This has been fun. It's about time to go arena crossing.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it, guys. 1 week's time, we're gonna do episode 3, round 2 of Supercross. And because of this, technically, I think that means that viewers are going to get 32 events. So we're actually going to have more episodes of this than there are super motocross rounds. Yeah, a little bit of value added. Glad we were able to get this in. And yeah, appreciate you boys for making some time for this. This is a lot of fun.
Fantastic, gentlemen. Thank you for watching, and you guys have a great weekend.
Perfect.